Kia ora koutou. Now this is an interesting information evening, isn't it? It's a little bit different than it normally is, and COVID-19 has affected us in different ways. So I'm afraid that you're going to have to put up with a recording of me today. So teaching and education, they're both about making connections. So an information evening, for example, is usually about you meeting someone from the School of Teacher Education, a member of the team. Unfortunately, as I said, this year COVID-19's interrupted our usual pattern of events. So I'm going to attempt to connect with you and provide a little information in a slightly different way than usual. I do usually get people in the audience involved in any presentation that I give, because teaching and learning is all about active participation. So you might consider yourselves being let off the hook in some ways because you're not going to have any tasks to complete today because I'm not there to work with you. So as I said, I'm used to working face to face. So I'm tucking myself in the corner of this recording so that you can see I'm a real person and not just a robot hiding in the background. Because you can see me, you'll already notice that there are some clues in my appearance about who I am and my interests. Teaching is all about being an active observer. That's how you notice learning and how you notice children's strengths. You can see that I'm wearing Canterbury colours in my necklace, and you can see that I feel an attachment to the environment in the brooch that I'm wearing. And some of you who are familiar with this style of jewellery will recognise that I've been to Oamaru, where these brooches are sold, so you can tell a little bit about me. You probably have a hint from my appearance that the gym is not my favourite place to be. And you can see that I wear glasses to see the world clearly. So you're probably already getting a bit of sense of me. You can also tell probably that I'm a bit of a talker. So within a couple of minutes, you have some sense of who I am as a teacher and who I am as a learner. You can also see that I'm showing a degree of courage in appearing on screen because every day is a bad hair day and during level 3, so I promise to hide myself away as we move through the PowerPoint. We have much more attractive photos to share, I promise. And you may think, looking at the background behind me, that I work in a tidy if rather bland space, but that's not true. I'm actually recording this in our spare room because my workplace is actually cluttered with books and teaching resources, and I didn't want you to see either the chaos or the dust. So that reminds me, teaching isn't simply about connecting, it's also about knowing people well and building relationships. So with that in mind, let's move on. So I've already said that teaching is all about connection. So part of that process of working together, no matter how briefly, even if it is just for something as short as an information evening, it's providing you with a little bit of information about who I am, where I'm from, and what's most significant to me. And the best way to do this is through a mihi. Now, at UC, we believe strongly that a bicultural approach is essential in teaching, so I'll just begin with a little brief mihi that will give you an insight to who I am. So, to know where I'm from, ko Mokateri te Moka, te Waimakariri te Awa, ko Michelle Clarke tōku ingoa, no o tautahia hou. So now you have a sense that I am a Cantabrian through and through. Christchurch is my home. You know the mountain and the river that I connect with, and you know my name. I'm the Year 2 coordinator of the Bachelor of Teaching and Learning Early Childhood, and I've taught into the program for quite some time. In fact, some of you weren't even born when I began my teacher education journey. I teach into one shared primary and early childhood course, but the rest of my teaching is in the early childhood programs, so both the Graduate Diploma and the Bachelor of Teaching and Learning. And my key areas of interest are children's perspectives, literacy, and learning theory. I've included 3 photos here alongside my own, just to give you a sense of what constantly reminds me why teaching is so important. So I do have to thank my great nieces, Sophie, who's the elder child in these photos, and the twins, Harper and Alia, and their parents for letting me share these photos, and also my colleague, Jodie, whose son, Iraya, is in one of the photos as well. You can see how early we start with teaching, from the twin great nieces there and their exploration of bubbles. Children start actually before they're even born, but are really actively engaged from the time they're babies. So learning through play is really important. A skilled teacher knows that and can make the most of every opportunity. Spotting moments to introduce learning opportunities when children show an interest in something is another valuable teaching skill. And that's why I've included that photo of Sophie there at the Antarctic Centre with the penguins. She was really interested in that. So we actually managed to introduce things like measurement and maths and changes over time. Not in a formal sense, but again, just capturing their interest and taking it in a different direction to extend understandings and to encourage exploration. And the third photo there reminds me that we need to capture and hold attention. That photo's of Sophie and Iraia at a performance of Peter and the Wolf last year. But that ability to capture children in that moment is something that every teacher needs. And no matter what I'm teaching or where I am, I constantly have children in the back of my mind because that's who you'll be working with, no matter what sector. So let's move on and just think about why you might want to be a teacher. Here's a range of activities and photos and across the sectors as well. There's early childhood, there's primary, there's secondary tucked in there. Think about teaching as a career. You can begin in early childhood, working alongside children there in early childhood centres and kindergartens and other types of settings, or you can teach in the compulsory sector, whether it be primary, intermediate or secondary school. Each different area has some common threads to it around teaching, but there are also specific differences, which is why we offer multiple programs. It is a profession where you can make a real difference in the lives of others, and it's not just the tamariki, the children, it's also their whānau, their family, and the wider community as well. We're going to focus largely on those more obvious education settings, but be aware that teaching happens in every part of the community, across all ages. So thinking about pathways to teaching, and that's where UC can help you. The College of Education, Health and Human Development, and specifically the School of Teacher Education, can point you in the right direction. That's who you can contact to talk about these things. So the Bachelor of Teaching and Learning, we call it the BTECHLIN for short. You can see why, because we have long labels for things. That's a 3-year program, and you can complete that to be an early childhood teacher or a primary teacher. We also have graduate diplomas, so you will come in with a previous qualification and spend a year focusing on learning to be a teacher. And again, you can do that in early childhood and primary, but also in secondary. Then we have postgraduate diplomas in primary or in secondary, and a Master of Teaching and Learning as well. So as we note there, all of our programs have a strong bicultural focus. You will learn Te Reo Māori and Tikanga Māori, and they will be a noho marae cultural experience, which is always one of my favourite parts of any of the qualifications, where we get to go away, spend some time together on a marae, and really get to grips with learning in a different space than we normally do at the university. So we're going to move through each of the sectors just briefly here. So when you talk about early childhood education, and this is clearly the sector that I am most familiar with because it's where most of my teaching is, you do have a chance to teach children when they're really open to learning. There's actually an old catchphrase based on research that says that 3 is too late. Why would you think that? You know, there's a lot of argument about that. But brain development is highly significant in this period. And young children are great risk takers as well. So early childhood teachers have many opportunities to be really powerful role models. Your enthusiasm matters. Now, as an early childhood teacher, you can inspire children's imaginations and their learning dispositions through exploration, through experimentation, and using play as a vehicle for learning. You can teach social skills authentically and genuinely by engaging children in group activities like gardening, like musical experiences, like cooking together. And the exciting thing about early childhood is that no 2 days are ever the same. You really get to see the competent child in action. You provide support for families. And through guided play, you can really help children gain the skills that they need holistically, not just for thinking cognitively, but actually to be healthy intellectually, emotionally, and physically. It's a really challenging career, but it's very satisfying and you can make a real difference. And no matter what anybody says, this is something I always feel I have to point out, it isn't about babysitting. Teachers are really skilled facilitators of learning. So as I said, there is the 3-year Bachelor of Teaching and Learning program, or there's also a Graduate Diploma in Early Childhood Teaching. That's 1 year full-time study, and it's offered by distance and campus. Actually, that's something to point out too. The Bachelor of Teaching and Learning for primary and early childhood is also taught by both distance and by face-to-face classes. So looking at primary. Now, primary teachers work with children in years 1 to 8, so about ages of 5 to 13-ish, and they work in primary and intermediate and middle and area schools. So primary teacher education students are interested in working with children and their communities. Children don't exist in a bubble, even though that's a word we're throwing around a lot this year. They exist as part of a much wider community. Primary teacher education students want to teach all school subjects. You have to be well organised and well prepared, and we will support you with that across the 3-year program. And we're seeking people who are nurturing and who really enjoy encouraging and promoting a love of learning in others. This is the beginning of the compulsory sector, so you work with a different curriculum document to the early childhood teachers. However, we give you some sense of both so that you can see how children progress throughout their learning journeys in different educational settings. So we want you to be part of the learning journey for children. You'll continue with children, building on what's begun in early childhood. You'll engage children learning in curriculum areas like reading and writing and maths, as well as science and music and technology and languages and all of those other areas. It's a very rewarding and satisfying career, and again, you can make a real difference to children's lives. Now, remembering that this is where children enter the compulsory sector, so their formal education and the associated patterns of learning are established here. Key competencies build really nicely on the dispositions we focus on in early childhood. The other thing about primary teaching is you have the opportunity to bring your own interests into the classroom as well, just as we do in early childhood. And I suspect that many of you remember your own primary teachers who were particularly creative or fantastic storytellers or mad scientists or had you out exploring PE in quite different ways. And those teachers spotted your potential because they spent so much time with you across every day of the school year. They saw your interests and your abilities across the whole program of study or that whole school day. Now, as well as the Bachelor of Teaching and Learning, which again is that 3 years full and part-time study on campus and by flexible learning options, we do have a Graduate Diploma of Teaching in primary, which is full-time, again, by campus, on campus and by distance. And we also have a Master of Teaching and Learning, which is 1 year full-time as well. So there are multiple options. You don't necessarily have to go straight into teaching. You might try something else first and then think, no, you know what, teaching's for me, and come back with that shorter program. Now, secondary teachers work with young adults, with young people in years 7 to 13, as it says there. Commonly the ages are around 11 to 18, depending on which type of school you're working in. And again, there's intermediate, there's middle, there's area, and there's secondary schools. So there are a range of opportunities to use a secondary qualification. You are contributing here on children's journey through the compulsory sector, but also beyond, because some young people will leave earlier than others. You get to join us at graduate or postgraduate levels, so you've already spent some time in the tertiary sector yourself. With secondary, you share your passion and enthusiasm in a slightly different way because you teach one or more subjects that you're really particularly passionate about. We want to see you inspiring your students. We want to see you encouraging them and giving them skills, enthusiasm, dispositions that they need to make a positive difference in the world. So, as we've said, you're going to be interested in working with young people and young adults. You're going to be passionate about the subjects you teach. We want you again to be organised and well prepared. And we know that that's a bit of a journey for some of us. And we want you to think not only about children and young people's academic skills, but think more holistically about their well-being, about their contribution, about their social, emotional, their cognitive and their physical development. And again, we're hoping that you're really going to work on cultivating that love of learning in the people that you work with. So in secondary, like primary and early childhood, you're going to learn about theory, you're going to learn about practice, you're going to learn about management of teaching. You're going to be thinking about the place and the role of education, the characteristics of learners, and the teaching and learning process. That's true across all of our programs. You'll spend a lot of time working in classrooms where you can practice and refine your teaching, your planning, your management, your assessment, and you can get lots of feedback on that. So by the end of your studies at UC, you'll have learnt and developed all of the professional teaching knowledge and skills required to be a teacher in New Zealand in whatever sector you're focusing on. Now in secondary, you can specialise your teaching in two of the following subjects: art, English, health, international languages, mathematics, music, gosh, the list is long, isn't it? Outdoor and environmental education, performing arts, physical education, science, and that can be biology, chemistry, physics. You might want to look at social studies, classical studies, economics, geography or history, technology, and te reo Māori. So there are a range here to consider, and you can really bring your particular passion and focus. There's also an opportunity to look outside teaching. We do teach education within the Bachelor of Arts, and actually that's how I came into education. I had the opportunity to explore a range of topics that really sparked my interest in children's learning, and it led me in the direction of teacher education. Who knows where it could lead you? Sometimes if you just want to dip your toe in the water, this is the beginning of the path to teaching, early childhood, primary, secondary or tertiary. It can also take you in a range of other directions and careers, but with skills, knowledge and dispositions that are really going to enhance your capacity within a variety of workplaces. For example, I studied education while I was working as a nurse because public health and education, health education were my interests. So it might be that education is your focus from the outset, or you can complete education papers within a suite of other courses you're enrolled in a Bachelor of Arts. And who knows where that interest will take you. As we've said, there are three broad streams here. It's visible on the slide. There's learning, there's a focus on development and health, and there's also social and cultural studies and education. So different types of education papers may appeal to you. And as I said, it can be a major, it can be your focus, or it can be a minor. It can be part of a suite within the BA degree. And there are opportunities to move on to postgraduate study as well, building on what you get from your undergraduate degree. And one of the advantages here that you may find is that we not only have campus classes, we also have distance options. Some things work better for some people than others. So let's think about where a degree with education or in education could take you. In terms of teaching, there are placements. During the 3-year degree, the Bachelor of Teaching and Learning, in early childhood and primary, students will spend 6 weeks in year 1 in early childhood or primary settings, depending on which qualification you're completing. In year 2, you get a 25-hour community placement where we take you into other spaces and allow you to explore, make connections with pockets of the community who you may not even be aware of, and think about how you can use that for your teaching. And then you spend an additional 5-week placement in a school or an early childhood setting in your second year. And then in your final year, you currently spend 2 5-week placements, so a total of 10 weeks in your 3rd year on placement. trying out all of those things that you've learned in class. This is currently under the period, not teaching placements themselves, but the period of time you should spend in centres or schools is currently under review with the Teaching Council. So there's likely to be even more time spent in educational settings in the future. With the graduate and postgraduate level, placements are more intensive. Placements are often 7 or 8 weeks in length, and sometimes you are required to spend days in settings in addition to that. So you get that nice dropping in, dropping out experience, but you also get long periods where you're engaged in the sector in which you will be working. So when I say 7 to 8 weeks, that happens twice, once in the first half of the year, once in the second in the 1-year programs. And there are other opportunities too. You can see there are sport internships and cultural awareness experiences as well. One of the ones that's captured quite nicely here is our Samoa Malanga. And this happens once a year. So for 2 weeks, students have the opportunity to go and spend time in Samoa with our Kairahi Pacifica. They go into educational spaces, they learn about community. It's quite eye-opening. And you can see there we have used other spaces as well, just to extend your knowledge and understanding of children and the significance of context and the significance of culture. So we need to think about all of these other opportunities that are kind of embedded in our programs. And we have a really flash word, a word called praxis, which is all about putting theory and practice together and making sense of it. So these types of opportunities are not just knowing what you do, but knowing why you do what you do and how that contributes to being an effective teacher, how it supports learning. So those different spaces can be really important. Thinking again about where your degree can take you and the employability. And we've got some statistics there. So sometimes it can be a bit tricky finding a job exactly where you want, but the great thing is with professional practice, it often influences. You stick in people's memories when you have the ability to show them what you can do. The other thing to remember is that not all teaching is about working in schools and early childhood settings. You're not limited to teaching children either, so it can take you in lots of different directions. Not all educational studies are going to put you in obvious spaces, but a background in teaching or in education is really valuable for a whole range of occupations and careers. But we've got some links up there. You can have a look, have a think about spaces that might work for you. But also, your studies are actually about seeing the world differently, seeing things you wouldn't have seen before. When you've been through a teaching program, you'll look at these photos and you will see things that don't appear obvious to you at the moment. Thinking about what will you notice that you didn't see before? What you see in these photos will change. You'll learn to look beyond the surface features to understand the how and the why of teaching and learning. You'll explore learning dispositions, skills, knowledge, discourses, equity, inclusion, and culture. Some of those might be unfamiliar words at the moment, but they'll make sense when you become a teacher. You'll learn about the bicultural underpinnings of our curriculum documents and why a bicultural approach is so important in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So even now, start thinking, how will you use that information in spaces other than schools and other than early childhood settings? Because you will. You'll understand your own learning and development much better. You're likely to discover where your own interests came from, why you're so much better at some things than others, and why some areas continue to prove challenging for you too. Because as much as we're focusing on you becoming a teacher, you will always be a learner as well. You'll connect theory to practice. After all, if you don't understand why you do what you do and how that's going to influence children's learning and young people's learning, you're far less likely to be an effective facilitator of learning. It's an exciting journey and it never ends. But why just listen to me? I've put a link here. I'm not going to play it. It's only a snippet, so I do encourage you, if you have access to this PowerPoint, hit the button, watch the YouTube clip. You can hear from 4 students who have taken 4 very different journeys with us. There's a primary teacher, a secondary teacher, an early childhood teacher, and there's somebody who's using education within the community in a completely different context. Do have a look. It's short, it's snappy, and it's a far better picture of what students get than I can possibly talk about at this point. And finally, if you have any questions, this is normally the bit where you can all talk to me, but unfortunately you can't. There are people to answer your questions though. And here are 2 really important links with people who know a lot about the programs that we offer, who can unpack some of those big ideas for you and who can point you in the right direction. So there's only one thing for me left to say, and that's thank you. It has been great meeting you virtually. I wish you well with your studies, and now you know who I am. You can always get in touch with me as well.